Welcome to the After Prime Primetime Podcast. I'm here with co-host Sammy Althouse. Hello, Sammy.
Hello, welcome.
And Alan Ben-Sion, who's my first cousin and founder and co-founder of After Prime and Argamont.
Glad to be here.
Nice to have you here, Alan.
Finally made it.
Yeah, I know. We don't really get you on camera too often, so yeah, excited to have a chat with you and see where it goes.
Sounds good.
So in today's podcast, we want to focus a lot on the journey that we've had together and probably start off right from the very beginning. I mean, it's even before we kind of got involved together. I believe you were trading at Citibank and doing a few things over there. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what that was like and how that led you into trading to kick off the podcast.
Really goes back. So my journey started in 2006. When I was aspiring to be a stockbroker. My uncle was involved with it and I was always fascinated with the movements in markets. And I went to him and said, Uncle, I want to be a stockbroker. I want to work with you. I want to work in the industry. What do you suggest? And I'm coming from a background of someone that didn't finish school, so didn't go to university. So definitely had the odds stacked up against me. And my uncle said, look, go and do any course that you can, any diploma, anything. Once you've completed it, come and talk to me and we'll see. So applied for a diploma of financial markets and ended up finishing that. And I went to him and I said, Uncle, now what? And he said, well, now go and find a job anywhere you can. Whatever role it is in any financial services place, just go out and find a job. So I ended up taking a role at Citibank as a customer service operator, which was basically for their deposit products and just really answering phones and guiding people through applications and things like that. So enjoyed it, loved the dynamic. And I think within about 4 months, I started getting really interested in the FX trading team, which happened to be a few desks over. Now, they were more FX dealers for the retail business and more like mums and dads who came on and, overseas guys that wanted to transfer money. So part of the wealth management division and basically ended up getting really close with one of the managers of that division. There was a role coming up as an analyst and basically what they wanted was a degree in financial services, economics, finance, at least 2 years in the field. And I said, what if I sat with you every day for an hour or half an hour? You teach me, so when this interview comes, I'll be able to smash it out of the park. I did. And when it did come to the interview, there were about 20 applicants, and by far I had the most knowledge in that division. So they made me analyst after about 6 months of being in a customer service role. And then moved on from that to the wealth management division after, because I was stepping up from being an analyst to actually giving advice to the different branches about where the interest rates, how they should price their clients. And that led me to get a role in managing fixed interest products for the wholesale division at Citi.
Wow. So, Alan, it sounds like you had quite a non-conventional road into financial markets and financial services. Obviously, your first foray into the world of finance was in a corporate setting, a massive investment bank like Citibank, also a retail bank. What was that experience like, working at a big corporation as your first gig out of high school, and what have you taken away from that experience?
It was quite, coming from, leaving school in year 10 and kind of working odd jobs here and there, which were always, definitely not desk jobs. Going into this like big environment, going onto a floor with 200 people and, trying to learn everything and trying to adapt to the lifestyle and
Wearing a suit.
And it was definitely a massive change, but I got into it pretty quickly and started to enjoy that type of lifestyle really quick and made a lot of new friends. The colleagues were great. The work-life balance was good. So it was enjoyable.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of people would hear that story and think, or see a resume and be like, how on earth did you get into Citibank without a degree? And it's interesting because I had similar experience where I actually got an offer from Goldman Sachs before I completed my degree. So to anyone out there who's watching who thinks you need a degree to get into some of these big institutions, like whilst it might definitely be a prerequisite at some places, there's definitely opportunities out there. But want to focus more on, it sounds like obviously you had an unconventional route into Citibank, but then also the way you kind of climbed the ranks there as well was pretty, I guess, creative in the sense that you recognized an opportunity internally and then befriended one of the trading desk managers and learnt from them directly. Do you think that because you weren't kind of molded in the kind of specific hierarchical way that most people might get into the world of banking, you were able to spot those opportunities easier? Or
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, how did it serve you that you perhaps didn't take the conventional route?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a new place, in a new environment, but I was hungry and I was so happy and thankful to be there because I knew the stakes in order to get into a place like that. And for me, I've always been the kind of person that likes to be surrounded by people. I'm always open, always like making new friends. And that's how I treated my colleagues. And the one thing I picked on really early was that people like teaching. People like to share their knowledge with people that are willing to listen. And I latched onto that with the manager of the fixed interest department. We just became close very quickly. We went out and partied a bit together, and we just I sat with him and just picked up his knowledge, and he was very, very happy to impart that knowledge onto me.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing that sometimes it isn't always the technical skills that get you places. It's those interpersonal, relationship building ability.
Yeah.
Jem, obviously you had quite an unconventional road into the world of financial services. Obviously starting off, as a graphic designer coming out of design school to then founding a jeans label called Billy Cock. I guess, can you talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey from graphic design to Billy Cock and then eventually to the world of finance with Global Prime?
Yeah, I'm trying to place myself like around the same time that Alans at Citibank. I was running a jeans label, a fashion label. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was like, for me, the creative side of the business is always the most enticing. I like to try and do things a little bit differently. So having that career in graphic design and then into fashion and then into finance, like you have to ask, so how does that transition almost happen? The fashion label was a lot of fun. I met my wife through there as well. She was the first model. So, although it didn't make any money, it was the best ROI of my life, although it's still costing me. But she's amazing. And yeah, around the time of Billy Cock, while Alan was at Citibank, we were doing our thing, and while it was a lot of fun, it definitely wasn't writing checks. So I saw Alan kind of driving around in a Mercedes, and I think I'm jumping the gun a little bit over here because there's probably a bit more story to what Alan was saying, but I basically tapped Alan on the shoulder and said, hey, what's going on? How'd you get this car? And he's telling me that he's trading. And from there, I kind of went under Alan's wing, and he taught me different strategies and how to trade the markets.
Yeah. So obviously, what you said, you mentioned you're working in the fixed interest desk at Citibank. How did you get from that and leapfrog into the world of trading derivatives, etc.?
So I got that opportunity to run that division because it was more front end sales focused. And, my original role as an analyst was meant to just be producing reports and analyzing where the markets were and giving that data to the sales teams. The sales teams ended up going, look, we don't quite understand this. Can you chat to my client for you? And that's how it started. So when I went to lead the fixed interest division, it consisted of a very large portfolio of corporates. So anywhere from like ASX listed company, charities, Catholic diocese. And it was a really good opportunity because from day one, I was on the phone to clients. I was going in there, building relationships, getting them to invest more money. And it was fun. It was like where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I was leading a team of 3 and rising up the ranks. And then the GFC hit in 2008. And great timing. And as you know, Citi was kind of front and center in the news. And biggest thing about corporates is investing with AAA rated banks. And Citi was that up until there was, a risk that they weren't. So that the outflows of cash from the bank were significant. That brought up a lot of stress between me and my managers. And I started kind of thinking about where I really wanted to be, and that was foreign exchange. And a couple of times when there were open days at Cities, I would go up and meet the EFX team. And I realized very quickly that there was zero chance that I was ever going to land a role over there. It was a very tight group. They were kind of trading together. They were with each other for quite some time. And so I ended up leaving Citi just after the GFC hit, and really went to figure out what I wanted to do on my own. So I was already trading. I was already learning the FX markets. And I was trading through a company that I'm sure everyone knows called Axie Corp, and got really close with the team and started to understand a little bit how the back end worked with MetaTrader 4 and swaps. And because I had quite a lot of clients in the Citi days, one of their products that Axie had was actually physical conversions, and we had a lot of clients at Citi that had the requirement for that, and the rates that Axie was offering was just at that stage was really, really cheap compared to what was out there. So I started up as an introducing broker to Axie and started to onboard quite a lot of clients in that space, not only in physical, but they were actually spot traders as well.
Right.
And that's what really began the journey in FX broking for me.
So just to take a step back, I feel like most people that are not familiar with the world of FX trading think of physical FX as, a physical currency exchange. When you go overseas, you need to exchange, Aussie dollars for US dollars, Aussie dollars for euro, etc. But to the layman, how could you explain the concept of trading currency as opposed to just physical FX?
Yeah. So, spot trading, it will enable you to leverage. Number one, I think leverage is the key here, because when you're conducting a physical transfer, it's one for one. You have the requirement for a service or a payment, and you're literally converting one currency to another. With spot trading, as you know, markets go up and down. Someone who was to try to trade with $100,000 would not really be able to capitalize too much and create much of an ROI without leverage. The spot markets basically allows you to trade currencies with leverage and really capitalize on very short-term movements. There's a lot of high-paced, sophisticated platforms. Back then, MT4 was the best, probably still is the best platform out there. And it's the allure, right? You've got the charts, you've got all the different currency pairs, precious metals, equity indexes. It just opens up a whole new world.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they think of trading, they're thinking conventional equities trading or options trading, when the irony is FX is some of the most liquid, not the most liquid markets in the world. I guess the next piece would be about starting Global Prime. So obviously you mentioned you left Citibank. Jeremy was obviously doing his thing with Billy Cock, but then also you guys started coming together in an attic and starting to trade together. Can you perhaps talk a little bit about that experience, coming together, trading out of an attic, the highs, the lows, what was that experience like?
As that IB business, was growing and doing well, I started, I was trading quite a bit on my own and learning different algos, testing different strategies out there, and just, really trading macro strategies, a little bit short-term intraday. And it was going well. It was great. A lot of cool strategies. So I was living in my 2-bedroom apartment in Edward Street, and it had a little cool attic space that I turned into like a mini office, and it was a cool setup. It's like separated me from the apartment. Go up there. I was working a lot of kind of really late sessions, and
Used to pull the stairs down, right?
used to pull the stairs down, and it was heaps of fun, and I was mostly trading at night, sleeping at the day, and just living my life and having fun, really having a lot of fun. And one day Jeremy kind of comes over and hangs out. I remember I cooked you a steak.
You cooked me a
on the
steak every
barbecue.
night.
Yeah, that's
Always
it.
veal schnitzels.
And the veal schnitzels were great. And yeah, he was always asking, like, what are you doing? Like, what's the plan here? You got a Merc, you bought yourself an apartment, what's happening here? So I started kind of opening the doors and, showing him what I was doing, and showed him the charts, and showed him kind of like going online and how I looked for strategies. And basically overnight, this guy was obsessed, and one of the things that kind of stood out really quickly was how he got immersed with the trading community, and was talking to different people on forums, and anyone that was posting a new strategy, Jeremy would like delve in, interact with everyone, break the strategy apart, trade it, like for like, and it was really cool. We started having quite a lot of fun. I wasn't on my own anymore. And yeah, I mean, but Jem, you know,
Yeah, I remember
hear it.
one story that stands out is you sent me home with your laptop and you had a couple of positions open and you said, just don't touch anything. If it gets to this level, get out. So I said, okay, took the laptop home. And then for some reason, I thought I was the man and started to prop trade your account. And I'm clearly like martingaling into this position, adding as it's going against me. The sweat started. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time the sun started coming up, Alan calls me up and goes, "What are you doing? Shut everything." And we're going to have a big chat. But they were great days. You know, I come over there every night. Like I said, Alan would cook us dinner. Great veal schnitzels. I'll never forget them. And then, yeah, I think at some point, the strategies that we were doing we worked really well in like a trending in a range bound
market. We killed it for a very long time until it didn't.
Yeah. And then I had a strategy that worked really well in trending markets and a bit of a following on Steve Hopwood's forum. People wanted me to trade their accounts. And even around that time, this broker Global Prime, we knew the owner of it and Alam was very close with him. So went knocked on his door and basically said, look, you know, is there any opportunities out there? And basically got given the keys to this brokerage that was set up with prime brokers and, you know, tier one liquidity providers. And it was just really interesting. And I'm sure any trader would have appreciated this, is to be able to jump into a proper institutionally set up broker. And we're sitting before on MT4 and trading from the front end, but now all of a sudden seeing the back end and seeing all the pipes and the lines and how the credit works for brokers. And yeah, we really walked into this model that was all about A-book liquidity, which is basically where you're not making any money from client losses and all the trades are going directly to the banks and STP'd. And yeah, it was
just so simple and so clean.
Yeah.
You know, it was just set up, you know, as a added service to a few clients. And yeah.
And I think the thing is, it's like maybe for people to understand that like online trading was obviously becoming popularized throughout the 80s and the 90s, but FX really took off like in the kind of mid 2000s and really exploded from like, let's call it from 2010 onwards. I guess, what did your like friends and family make of what you guys were doing? Did they understand it? Did they just think it was something in finance?
I can tell you what my friends had a nickname for me. It was called Demo Pips. They're like, look at you trading all these demo accounts, you're making all this demo pip money. That was what they used to call me. So I think it, you know, came with a bit of like, what are you guys doing? Is it a scam? You know, how are you making money just from trading? It doesn't really make sense.
And the biggest question people always used to pose is like, what are you doing different to anyone else? Like, it's great, you're starting a brokerage, but I mean, isn't everyone doing it? I hated that question. Still do.
So let's take it back to, you know, Jem and yourself are trading outside, you know, inside of an attic in Bondi. Obviously, you're trading through Global Prime. I guess, what did you guys see in each other that gave you the conviction that, hey, you know, we can partner up and we can really take this to another level? I mean, it's one thing to be given an opportunity, which obviously is massively valuable, but then to be able to take it and have the self-belief to be able to capitalize. So I guess, how do your skill sets complement each other, and what did you see in each other that gave you the conviction that, hey, we can really make this into something that could be, you know, profitable?
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to look in hindsight and it makes more sense. Maybe at the time it didn't so much, but the things that definitely made sense before is Alan and I have known each other for a long time. As mentioned before, we're first cousins. We grew up together. You know, we've been through the wars together in many ways in different situations as well. And I think one thing we've always had is each other's backs. Alan always struck me very early on as a very generous person. I remember when I first went into the attic, I was like, oh, whose phone is that lying around? He's like, oh, it's a spare, you want it? And it was like a new iPhone. I was like, what, really? And he gave me this phone. And that really made me feel like, you know, he cares, and he always has. But just in general, I think Alan and I differ in the way that Alan's more of a realist and I'm more of a dreamer, maybe. So when you combine the two together, like, there's a lot of times that I'll come up with some harebrained idea and my mind's telling me, don't even bring it up, because Alan's going to be like, this is crazy. But then I'll say it and we'll work together to validate it and to work out if it actually makes sense. So in many ways, I think Alan holds me back from doing a lot of things that I probably shouldn't do, which is a very good thing. And then vice versa, you know, sometimes there's situations that I'll be able to help Alan out as well.
No, and Alan, from your perspective, obviously you're the one that had the kind of more you know, acclaimed financial background. You'd experienced at Citi, you'd been trading for multiple years, you had a resume and you had like cachet before you got into the world of broking. So what was it about Jeremy that made you decide, you know, this is someone that's not just my cousin, but actually makes sense as a viable business partner?
You know, really early on, going through the ranks at Citi, then going through the IB route, and how cutthroat that side of the world was. I also invested in a couple of deals that lost me quite a bit of money because I had blind trust in people, or because I had too much faith, or even just I realized people were just shrewd. The one thing I knew about Jeremy is that he's going to have my back no matter what, and that I could trust this guy completely, and I think in business and wherever you go in life, if you're lucky enough to have someone like that, then, you've got a good chance.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I guess effectively you guys were starting a business. We've spoken quite a bit in terms of the technical side of it, the trading, etc. But fundamentally it was a business. Obviously that's what it was. And, in the early days, starting your entrepreneurial journeys, in the world of trading, what were some of the challenges? What were some of the thoughts that were going through your minds as these two kind of mid-20s that were given the keys to a very powerful business engine effectively? I'm sure it was exciting. I'm sure there was aspects of it that were, scary. But I guess what were the thoughts that were going through your mind as you were starting out on this new adventure together?
So many. I mean, you walk into a business that doesn't really have much running through it, and then you have to make a website, and then you have to make a CRM, and then you have to bring clients on board, and then you have to change your onboarding process. And it's just this constant act of refinement. I really always looked after the retail side of the business, and Alan, coming from the financial background, looked after the institutional side, the prime of prime clients, providing liquidity to other brokers, banks, for example. It's just I think that was really like the early on days, was catching up and putting all the pieces together to look after everyone, understanding what the clients were looking for, and making sure everyone was looked after. But then a big part of the challenge of growing any business, especially one that you kind of walk into, is how do you get ownership, and how do you kind of scale up inside that business when it really belongs to someone else? So that was definitely a challenge on the journey.
Right. And Jeremy, you mentioned that at the time when you guys just started Global Prime, maybe it was 2 or 3 years in, you were on the cusp of getting married, you had a bit of money saved, but you effectively were ready to put it all towards the wedding and paying for that. And then you speak about how very shortly thereafter, you just started to see this increase in Global Prime's revenue, and by virtue of that income, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, your sense of trust in the process? Like when you started being willing to fork out the $100,000 you had saved for a wedding, but then also knowing and doing it in the faith that things were going to work out over time.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things you have to pay for regardless. So I don't think it even mattered with trust. You just had to pay it. And I wouldn't change a thing because it was an amazing wedding. Definitely, like when we first started, we obviously had to break even. It didn't take long to get to that stage, which was good. And I think I just used to spend like every Friday night, specifically in bed, crunching numbers in my head. And I kind of knew what we would make revenue per billion traded. And I just had this number in my head of 20 billion. And if we ever got to that stage, I felt like we were going to be okay. But just before we got married, and I spent all my life savings in one night, is even just before then, you could kind of see the uptick, and you knew where things were going. We knew which clients were being onboarded. And yeah, since then, it was just pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to get to work with both of you for a number of years now, and it's always been amazing to me, the yin-yang relationship that you both have. Obviously, Alan is deeply technical and Jeremy is deeply creative. I guess, how do you guys think about the division of responsibilities in the business? Obviously, you play to your strengths. Jeremy's more so going to handle the marketing, the client-facing, the retail side. Alan's more on the institutional side, et cetera. But how do you think about making decisions as a team and factoring in both very unique viewpoints as part of that decision-making process?
I mean, the business, although it has many divisions and there is a separation between retail and institutional, I think even though Jeremy may not manage the technical side of the business and the institutional, he still understands every single aspect of it back to front. And it's the same thing on the creative side. Although, I don't get into the nitty gritty of what Jeremy does, I have a very good understanding of the different channels. And, especially recently being, having to, take over a lot of the divisions as different people in the company walked out. We just have an understanding. We will manage what we have to manage, but then when it comes to any sort of decision making in the business, we always bounce it off each other. So I've always found that dynamic, works out really well. He plays to his strengths, so do I, but we both know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think Gemini, you and I have spoke a lot about like what you look for in a co-founder, what you look for in a partner, and I know the obvious old expression that opposites attract, and they do. But it's been very interesting to observe that take effect in a business context and really work in your favor to the extent that you're, like you said, a dreamer, very kind of outrageous ideas, and then Align is able to take those ideas and maybe rein them in to make them more practical. So I guess, how do you make sure that your creative vision is able to manifest, but at the same time, sometimes it gets reined in? How do you kind of manage, having to sometimes be a bit more realistic and pragmatic as opposed to just being wildly creative and ambitious?
I think there's been certain things along the way, especially recently, that I've tried to push a bit of the boundaries on the creative side of things. And there's certain things that I know that I'll have to go to Align to and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Because even I know it's a bit spicy. And he'll bring his hat into the ring and make sense of it with me. But then there's also times where I'm like, you know what, I got to pull this risk off. And it's actually, I've only ever done it once. And yeah, it turned out to be okay, I think, in the end. But just in general, I think we just, like Align said, have a good understanding of where the business is at, what its kind of identity is. And yeah, I might like to push boundaries a little bit. Maybe I wish I could push it a lot more sometimes. But at the end of the day, I think you have to get to a certain level before you can push certain buttons. And yeah, it's just the system of getting to that point.
Yeah.
But I think we're handling it pretty good so far.
So both of your entrepreneurial journey was a super rapid ascent. I think it's fair to say, like in the space of 10 years, you effectively went from a business that was doing nothing to a business that was doing multiple millions of dollars in revenue, year on year, scaling a team from 2 to 35 people at one point, maybe it was even 40 people towards the end. But there was this midpoint that happened, let's call it circa 2020, 2021, where you guys really wanted to take the business in a different direction and perhaps grow in a different way and foray into the world of mass market, appeal, like the likes of IC, Pepperstone, etc. What was the, I guess, key driver behind that decision? And then, maybe we can speak about the experience that we went through that followed that decision process.
So, circa 2021, we took the business in the direction of more institutional driven. Retail was humming along, it was doing its thing, it was growing organically, but I saw the growth and the opportunity in the way that broker clients and algo traders and more sophisticated traders were being handled. Being a STP broker comes with its downsides and its upsides. One of the upsides is that giving all the flow to the banks means that they compete for your flow, means that they will take your calls when you need to. And when you need something action and you've got a new opportunity, they're there to kind of support you. So we were able to build an exceptional institutional brokerage where clients were coming, they were coming organically or they were coming just from word of mouth, and they were staying and they were growing. And, we were very fortunate in that sense to have one of the largest brokers in the world come on as a client at that time, trading equity indexes, FX, metals. And we saw, net open positions go from an average of 50 to 60 million to up to 400 to 500 million in a very short period of time. And we knew this growth, and we knew then these guys didn't want to stop. And given that we had these guys as a client, there were others starting to knock on the door. We had an amazing partnership with a firm called Vidar that were market making futures for us and equity indexes, which means we were able to give a superior product to these guys, and we were delivering. And one of the things that started to become a strain was we wanted to push boundaries. We wanted more credit. We wanted more limits. But unfortunately, we didn't have the capacity to offer much more. And when you have to go to your largest client and say, I'm sorry, but I can't give you any more credit. In fact, I need you to actually pull it back a little bit. That's when, they turn around and say, are these really the guys that we should be working with and trading with? I think that's where things started to kind of change a little bit in the dynamic of the business and the partnership.
Right. And I think, look, Global Prime established itself from the outset as being more of like a boutique, institutional grade, platform that was more predicated or catered towards sophisticated traders, institutional funds, algo traders, etc. And it wasn't really about that kind of mass market retail punting game until we kind of forayed into that, circa 2021, 2022. But I guess fundamentally the identity of Global Prime was, again, bringing institutional grade trading benefits to the masses, democratizing access to institutional grade trading platforms. So I guess what was that decision like for you, Jeremy, specifically on the retail front, to kind of departure from the identity of Global Prime that at that point had been more focused on the insto side, to saying, why don't we go really hard into the world of retail, knowing that the model from a marketing distribution standpoint is completely different?
I think somewhere through selling Global Prime and moving into After Prime, we came to the realization that we were able to generate and offer a superior price to not only the banks that were pricing to us, but also to other brokers out there as well. And that kind of really led to what the vision for After Prime would be the lowest cost and the best execution. And the only way you can really do that is if you're actually behind the price and you're fine tuning the entire order book, for example. And that's really what Elan does in Argamon for After Prime. And you really need to have full control of that stack. And we were able to accomplish that. From day one, we kind of created our own tech that competed with our price versus, like I said, other brokers and banks, and had the best price in the world. And now we're kind of venturing more into the zero commission offer and seeing if we can offer for everyone zero commission with raw spreads. And it's still pretty much an STP model where everything gets back to back with the LPs. But just in general, it's like tying down that vision of being the lowest cost and the best execution. And for me, it's like it's not just for the bigger guys, but it's also, like you said, bringing those institutional benefits to the retail guys as well, and making sure that they're getting the same offer that our institutional clients are getting as well.
Right. So if we just take a step back, obviously Global Prime, yourself and Alan are operating it. Things are going well. The business is growing. It's scaling. And then obviously in more recent times, there was the sale of that business and the transition to what is now After Prime and Argamon. I guess, can either of you talk to some of the challenges that you faced throughout that process, and as well as some of the things you might have learned that are now, I guess, fueling or inspiring the vision for both Argamon and After Prime?
I mean, there's so many. I kind of looked at Alana like, do you want to go first or should I go first? There's so many. I think the biggest lesson in all of it is to choose your partners correctly and make sure you're with someone that, you have the long-term vision together on. That's the most important. Luckily, Alana and I shared that, and we were able to transition into, the new world of After Prime and Argamon together. And then I think another big one is that as you grow a business, you get to a certain point where you can kind of start to take your foot off the gas, and you have other people looking after things. You've got a big office with like 25, 30 people working over there. You put someone in charge of this division, that division, and then all of a sudden you think to yourself, you know what? I'm smart. I paid for good people to come and good money for good people to come and look after these really important parts of the business. But you don't realize it until you learn the lesson that you do have to be in the weeds with everything, and you can't just give 100% responsibility to someone in the business on a division. And it's not so much about even just being reported to correctly. It's actually about fully understanding from top to bottom what's happening everywhere. And it's not so much about micromanaging, but it's more about really just being there alongside your people and making them feel that you're a part of it. If you don't do that, then they're going to do whatever they want to do, and things go awry.
Yeah, it's super interesting because they speak about, this is quite a well-covered topic in venture, like what level of involvement should a CEO or should a director or a managing director have day-to-day in a company? What should be the level of separation between the C-suite and, the people that are working in the business, et cetera? But I think if you look at example after example, now this is becoming very well covered, looking at examples like Elon Musk, right, where he's known to be on the floor, whether it's at Twitter or now X, or whether it's at Tesla. He's literally known to be on the floor with the engineers, deeply technical. And it's been somewhat criticized by certain, people in the tech world that he's perhaps too involved, but you see the results that he's able to garner just by virtue of being so accessible and so available. So, when I was at Global Prime back in the day, whilst you guys obviously were there from a management standpoint, there wasn't this deep level of involvement in the weeds the way both yourself and Alan are involved now. So I guess, Alan, from your perspective, what has it been like, really involving yourself again back day to day in the weeds, whether it's on the trading ops side, on the institutional side, as well as taking more of an interest what's happening on the retail side? I guess, what was the driver behind that decision to kind of get really back into the weeds, and how's that process been like for you transitioning back into it?
I think it took a good 10 years to realize that at the end of the day, the people that make the best decisions for the company are myself and Jeremy. But it's all been part of the process. And as of the last couple of years, with the team getting smaller, the option to go and rehire or take more responsibility onto myself. And ever since doing that, I feel that the whole dynamic of the company has changed. We feel so in touch with every aspect that's going on. Decisions are not being made without a final sign-off. And the business is in a place today that, in my opinion, we've never seen in our entire history. Divisions are operating smoothly. Visions that we've had for years, and I'm talking for 7-8 years, visions of mine and Jeremy to optimize liquidity, from constructing order books to price making, passive hedging, everything that we're doing today is actually becoming a reality. And I think it could have only become a reality with us getting in there, understanding everything from the business from the bottom up, and just making that vision a reality.
Yeah. I actually want to touch a little bit on Argamon and specifically your vision for Argamon. Obviously, we speak quite at length about Global Prime and After Prime, the retail side. But recently, you've had this transition from trader, to operating a brokerage to now, foraying into the world of market making. So I guess what's your vision for Argamon? And I guess what is the USP? What makes Argamon different, special? Where do you want to see it, and where do you want to take it over the next 5-10 years?
So we've been in so many different aspects of this business, and we've seen the issues that we faced as clients of brokers. We saw the issues that our clients faced, and where we struggled to support them. We knew what the issues were, but we didn't have control and ability to really, fix up, what a client was going through, be it slippage or be it having the correct volume or whatever it was. When you're passing everything through the banks, they will help you and they will support you, but only up to a certain level. They can't micromanage every single client of theirs, and you can't expect them to. And that's what I really wanted to do. And that's what I saw as a vision for Argamon, is each client to be managed down to a level where we understood how they were trading, when they were trading, how much they needed to trade at any given time, and ensuring that when they traded, they were able to get the execution that they needed to give them the best chance at improving their portfolio and their returns. And I realized very quickly that we had to do that on our own. And that's where we set out on the journey many years ago. But it has really started taking off in the last 6 months.
Mm. And one of the amazing things I've been able to observe about what's happening inside of Argamon is your ability to create really high fidelity partnerships with firms like Mahi, and there's a few others that have been really instrumental in setting up this market making business. So I guess what have you observed, or what have you learned about the power of relationships, and how does one go about building these deep industry relationships to the point where former clients become partners, or former service providers and vendors become partners? How are you able to achieve that kind of closeness to be able to eventually, partner?
Yes, I think, there's different aspects. There's from the client side is these clients, they really just want someone to understand them. And when they say they're going to do something, they want you to stick to it and actually do it. There's a lot of brokers and there's a lot of sales guys that talk a big game about what they can do for a client. Client signs up, comes on, and they just see the same issues. And it's probably not the broker's fault. It's more that the broker just doesn't have control over it. Those kind of relationships I like to foster, and I like to, when I'm bringing on a client, I like to discuss and tell them what I can do and actually provide it to them. That's number one. I mean, on the partnership side, we find that there are so many like-minded people in our industry, and there are so many different systems and so many different, trading shops that can bring so many different dynamics to your company. And for me, it's all about partnership. We are a small team. We are a team of 25 now, maybe 28. And, we've gone down the route of trying to create these systems on our own and trying to do everything in bespoke. And I think what we've learned is you either go all out and you either go and build up the team and you raise money and you build this over 5 years with no chance of success, or you partner up with people, you seek and you find people that not only have the product, but also you're the same mindset. And you're leveraging off their systems, their infrastructure, their people. It enables us to get where we want to go a lot quicker than trying to do things on your own. And that's where I found the biggest success. Is the success has been this year in Argamon has been driven by the partnerships that we've created.
Yeah, and there's this well-covered concept inside of venture and early stage, startups. The idea of the first mover's advantage, being able to be very quick to market. And I guess it's interesting because we observe like the last few years of Global Prime. I think the objective was really, like you said, to try and build everything in-house, spend a very large sums of money on development, R&D, etc. And there's no guarantee of a return. So I guess, Jem, what have you now? I guess how's your perspective changed vis-a-vis going to market? Through leveraging third parties that can get you to market quicker versus building something in-house and owning the stack.
Yeah, I mean, even for After Prime, there's quite a bit of technology that we built in-house. And like you said, you spend a lot of money on it. And then you have the tech debt as well. And, at the end of the day, you really have to, before you invest in that, like Alan said, is go and analyze what else is out there in the market. And I think for different parts of the business that we're kind of moving into different options of how we do things. Time and time again, you see that if you do the research, and ChatGPT is a great place to start because here's a tool that we're using. Here's, can you suggest a few other ones that are similar? You can build some questions around it to really like hone in on, say, 3 or 4 different providers. You call them up, you have your sales call, you get run through the systems, you compare the pricing models from all of them. And there's always one that stands out as like best bang for your buck, doesn't lock you in for like multi-year contracts, for example. And yeah, if you do the research, the products exist out there, and I think you gotta do that due diligence. Even now there's certain things that we're thinking, do we build it ourselves or do we go elsewhere and see what else is out there? And there's a real focus to not kind of do the same mistakes that we did in the past. And I call them mistakes because in hindsight, if we look at it, there's millions of dollars that we could have saved if we went about this way the first time.
To me, it's always been interesting why the preference for a lot of founders is to build the tech in-house, especially for things that are, inherently complicated systems, versus outsourcing, not necessarily to an agency, but, stacking together a bunch of third-party solutions and really accelerating your time to market. And to me, it's almost like very obvious. It's like the quicker you can get in the market and I guess find whether you want to call it product market fit or validate your customer base or validate the solution, like that data is invaluable. So why would you delay that? And obviously have to spend all the added costs associated with building something in-house when, like you said, if you do a bit of research, there's a very good chance that there's a bunch of sophisticated third-party options that you can potentially stack together to deliver your service that get you into the market much quicker. So it's an interesting discussion and a debate, vis-a-vis that. So we spoke a lot about last time about deep customer love. And one of the things I have to say I've observed both, obviously Jeremy, we spoke about at length on the retail front, but Alan, on the institutional front, the level of service that Argamon provides institutional clients is like nothing I've ever seen. The white glove treatment, the real emphasis on getting the best execution, best pricing, etc. I guess, how important is service to you, and what are the non-negotiables with respect to, if I'm an institutional client or a prospective institutional client, what can I expect from Argamon vis-a-vis service?
Yeah, I think it is one of the most important aspects of our business is the service that we offer. And I think that when a client comes on board, they're generally coming from a place where they haven't been treated fairly. And for us, honesty is everything. For us, we understand those needs, and it's bloody hard getting these institutional clients on board. Number one, finding them, then onboarding them, and then understanding their needs. And then the worst thing is they start trading and they're just like, oh, well, this is the same as the other broker we're at. And no one wants to go through that. And we've been through it. So I think the idea of being able to channel that and onboard the client and service him, even at times giving away part of our revenue to ensure that they're getting the execution they deserve. And I don't think that's something that is easily done in the industry. But we see it for the long term. We see the benefits of when you do the right thing by the client, even though you make less, you end up getting so much more. Why? Because they stay with you. They end up bringing more funds. They talk about you. This quarter has seen the largest number of institutional clients onboarded to Argamon and Global Prime in our history. And the beauty of it is that the feedback from these clients going live is they're not going anywhere. And in fact, they want to bring more. And that has been one of the most rewarding aspects this year of the business, is seeing, number one, a vision that we've had for 8 years come to fruition this year. And two, seeing clients happy The only thing I wish we could do more is lend more credit, but that'll be the next thing that we work on, and I think that's going to be one of the solutions we're going to bring to the table next year.
Yeah, and it's like the concept that we're going to keep hammering home, which is that idea of deep customer love. Like at the end of the day, it's that empathy, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only by virtue of you guys both being through the full life cycle of being a client that you have a deep understanding of what those customer pain points are, and then building solutions that you wish you would have had on the institutional side, on the retail side, and seeing that manifest successfully with existing clients. Alana, I want to touch a little bit more on your mindset. So, Jeremy reckons that by nature you're a bit more of a risk-adverse type of person, and that doesn't really reconcile with the world of financial markets, specifically with FX, which is inherently volatile, inherently very risky, etc. Lots of swings. As you were saying the other day, we were chatting about how P&L was flicking up and down intraday. Could go in multiple directions. So, how do you stay level-headed in this game? Do you have any kind of, we speak about tools in the toolbox that you can kind of pull out when needed in order to level yourself and kind of regain composure, maintain that level of poise in the face of inherently very volatile business?
Yeah, well,
His water bottle.
I think
Quick shout out
to Lark.
It's not sponsored.
Definitely not sponsored. I think you said it yourself. FX is risky. Metals is risky. Even more so, the need for a level head and the need to be risk averse, because it is so easy in this business to say, I'm going to give that extra bit of credit and I'm going to allow this client to, trade past, and run risky strategies because I'm going to make more money. I think a lot of people have a very short-term mindset in this industry. It's you bring on a client, how do you extract the most amount of money from him, or how do you convince him to trade more that he just churns and ends up paying you a hell of a lot of commission and losing his account. Look, like for me, I've always taken that conservative approach, and yes, it has. I've had to let relationships go in the past because of it. I've upset potentially partners in the past because of it, but I think it's enabled us to still be here today, and also clients, they start to appreciate it when you give them guidance about, you shouldn't be trading this much. You shouldn't be asking for these credit limits, because, when the volatility does, and it will hit, then, you have a very high likelihood of, losing your account. Like I said, we are well capitalized. We can take on more risk, but I choose not to. And I choose to take risk in a very calculated manner. For example, or most brokers in the industry prefer to take and internalize large amounts of money, sit on huge amounts of position. It works for them and great. But for us as a business model to hold on to that kind of risk, even though the chance of return is so much higher, and the money that we've seen other competitors make as a result is a lot higher than us, we opt to just take a conservative approach because I like to sleep at night when I can, and I also like to have comfort knowing that I'm pushing the boundary in learning new ways and understanding new ways to hedge my risk, to reduce my risk while still deriving a healthy profit, not just for me, but for my client. And some of the new execution logics that we've employed over the last 6 months is a perfect balance of earning revenue for the business and giving back to the client to ensure they're getting the execution that they need. And that sits really well with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's unique in the industry, but we speak a lot about how it's only by virtue of the fact that we're not holding big risk and we are letting the banks see a lot of flow that we're able to be in a pole position to start looking into doing things like market making. So there's a technical aspect that we're afforded by virtue of us effectively doing, I don't want to call it the right thing, but doing the less risky thing, the more ethical thing, whatever you want to call it. But I guess, can you maybe speak a little bit to how, because of the fact that we show a lot of flow to the banks, how that has afforded us the ability to now build these models that has enabled us to consider market making and doing, these types of technical trading strategies that perhaps wouldn't be available to us if we were just booking or internalizing all of
So I think it starts at the prime broker level. Having a tier one prime broker. I mean, when we first joined Global Prime, we had Morgan Stanley. Shortly after that, we went to BNP, then Standard Chartered, and today we are fortunate to be with NatWest. Having a prime broker is paramount to, number one, getting direct liquidity sourced from the banks direct, not through a third party or another broker, which a lot of our competitors have to go through. But it also gives you access to the interbank world. It gives you access to not only trade against other brokers, but anyone that has a prime broker. It's very simple to connect with them via the prime broker network and being able to make and take for them. So what that means is we can go and offset our risk very quickly and at a high spread with other interbank participants in the market.
So Alon, we've been in this game for, I think, over 13 years, since 2012, right? Unbelievable. It's a real innings. What is exciting you most about the future of Argamon, say 15 years on from when we first started this?
What's exciting me today is having control over our liquidity and control over our company, being in control of being able to tweak and understanding what my clients need, and then seeing that in action, seeing them punch those trades out with the exact fills and the exact execution that we spoke about has been one of the most rewarding aspects. And I just see that going from strength to strength over the coming years. This is only just the beginning of what we're able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of monitoring from the sidelines, even though I'm a co-founder on Argamon, but I see all the clients kind of coming on board, like you said, explain to us the issues they're having with slippage and execution. Then they kind of come on board and, we do a bit of fine tuning and give them what they're looking for, and they stick around and they're happy.
Yeah.
So it's clearly working.
One of the things that was really palpable when we went to Dubai was just the sheer passion that both of you exude for the Forex game, for the CFD game, for the derivative game, for the market making game, and how that's been able to attract all sorts of people from what is a very diverse industry, right? I mean, the conversations that we were having with people, whether they were hedge funds, whether they were quant firms, whether they were just regular retail traders, they were all, enamored by just the sheer passion that both of you have for the business. And I think it's a massive takeaway lesson for someone like me who's also endeavoring to do entrepreneurial pursuits, that you really have to love what you do. And that's very clear in both of your cases, that you just love the game. You're so committed to creating the best price, putting out the best product, having the best execution, offering the best service, etc. And I think if you're a client that's out there, whether you're retail or institutional, and you're looking for a brokerage that is really dedicated to putting out the very best product across the board, I mean, I think it's really hard to argue that you should go anywhere else.
Sounds like it needs a raise.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it was actually we had lunch yesterday with a fund manager. And one of the things that he was saying is he's got a portfolio now that will only invest in ASX listed companies that are founder led. Just for the purpose that the founders are the ones that drive the results and drive the company and have that passion. When they go, that tends to kind of dissolve. And I found that really interesting, and I really feel that about us in the company, being founder led, being involved, being in control. I think we know how to drive this company to the next level now. And that's a good feeling.
Yeah. And as a keen observer from the sideline, I can definitely say that the energy that's in the company now, given that, like you said, it was always founder led, but the level of involvement has amplified significantly since, a few years ago. The energy is different. There's a different vibe in the air. You feel like things move quicker, things move more efficiently. Visions are being realized, as you said. And yeah, it's an amazing kind of case study for me to observe what happens when founders step away from a business and allow others to run the show. How quickly do things get done, or do things start to fall away? And then the impact that can have straight away by just getting right back involved in the business. So yeah, amazing stuff. And yeah, Alon, I guess just quickly, you want to touch about some of the things that you're interested in outside of work. Obviously, you're a keen fisherman. You're a keen basketball player. You're obviously a dad of a number of young children. So how do you kind of maintain a work-life balance in the face of all these?
Or
I mean,
do
the
you?
industry.
I think, trying to make sure to, have enough time for everything is the most important thing, because people can very easily just go one way, focus only on work or focus only on family, or try to just balance work and family and then not have any kind of, off time. Very fortunate to have an amazing wife that allows me to, pursue my passions when I'm not working, I'm not with the family, to be able to go out, and she understands the importance of me getting out on the water in the morning, and going out for a fish with friends. It heals me. It just gets me ready for the week ahead. And I think that's where it starts, is having a partner that can see and nurture that. Even though we've got, 3 young kids, one's a newborn, 3 weeks old, last Sunday, she still allowed me to get out on the water for 6 hours. So, pretty amazing.
Shout out to Nina.
Do you
Shout out to
see
Nina.
many similarities between fishing and market making?
Yeah, sometimes you just can pull things out of thin air,
Well, it's funny because people like Jeff Bezos talk about there's no such thing as, he doesn't like to focus on work-life balance. He speaks about work-life harmony. And I think it sounds like, you've managed to find that happy medium between all these different things.
Yeah, because missing any one of those key aspects can allow a person to spiral out pretty quick. It's so important to have that harmony between work, family, passions. And if you can find that, you've won.
It all comes down to the team. You got your team at work, you can trust them to look after things, then you got your team at home.
Yeah,
that you can also trust to look
that's
after
exactly
things.
it.
So if you've got that both covered, then
100%. If you know that your family's being taken care of at home and you can go out there and pursue what you need to do, then you have literally won in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe finally, so Jeremy and I speak a lot about the idea of faith and how faith interplays with business. I guess where does faith stack up for you, and how does it kind of, drive or help you stay level-headed in this game?
Faith has been a journey for me. Been a journey on and off. You go through the trials that you go through, and at times you want to give up. And there have been so many times throughout this journey where I've gone to Jeremy and just said, maybe we need to just walk from this. Maybe the pressure's too much, or the odds are stacked up against us too much. Jeremy brings that faith aspect. I think because of Jeremy, I think my faith has increased over time. So it actually is because of him. I've been able to let go of a lot of negativity and really start to trust the process. And you see, when you have a positive outlook and you have faith, everything starts to.
It's amazing that you bring up Jeremy and his role in this, because a lot of times people think about founders and co-founders and all they focus on is the technical proficiency of the other person. And what they perhaps neglect a little bit is, do they have very strong values? Are they able to pull you out of dark places? Are they able to be a support system in the times when the going gets tough? And yeah, from my perspective, as someone who gets to observe all of this, it's really beautiful and amazing for me to be able to observe the way that you guys interact and kind of have this yin yang. And yeah, really excited to see where things go from here. So we're going to do some rapid fire questions. Alon, what was your most proudest moment as a co-founder?
Most proudest moment as a co-founder? There's been a few. The most proudest moment was April 23. Becoming our own bosses, really separating from the past and realizing that we were finally on our own. We were finally able to go where we wanted to go and lead the business where we wanted to. That was definitely one of the happiest and proudest moments of our career.
Nice. And Jeremy, who's been your biggest personal, professional inspiration? Sorry.
Alon. I mean, it's a very quick and easy answer. I know it sounds like we're just G'ing each other up on this podcast now, but mate, what he's given to me, I can't thank enough. For taking me under his wing, to give me the space to grow inside, the various companies that we've worked on together, just to, be there for my own personal things that I've gone through. And even till today, I'll say to Alon, I don't know, that's out of my league on one part of the business. He's like, why do you say that? Back yourself. If you actually tell yourself you can do it, you can do it. So it's funny because you say that I give you faith, but it goes the other way around as well. So yeah, he's my guy.
And finally, Alon, if you weren't in finance, what would you be doing?
You know what I'd be doing. Fishing. I actually had a fishing charter for a couple of years. That was running on the side. Had a really cool young kid running it. Mate, if I was not in this industry, or if anything of a fellow, I know what I'd be doing.
That's awesome.
Alon, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank
you for being my co-founder. I don't know if I can thank you for being my cousin. Maybe I have to thank my parents and your parents for that. But yeah, it's been a great podcast. Number 2, Sammy, thank you as well. And we're really looking forward to the next one. So like we end every podcast, like, subscribe, share, comment, all the things that everyone does with podcasts. And we'll see you on the next one.